supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended podcast, and the founder of the Blended Pledge. Now, I know we have been on a bit of a hiatus for the last couple of weeks. I've been in Florida. I had a great vacation, in case you wanted to ask, and really had just a great time. We got to see friends. I got to do a woman in supply chain dinner in Orlando, and then as well as Sarasota, and we had a great time. Now, I can't wait to talk a little bit more about that. Now, Audrey Ross is supposed to be joining me for this episode today. She's not here yet, but hopefully once we get through the introduction, she will be joining us. All right, let's hear from our show sponsors. So are you ready to find your community? If you're struggling to find a supply chain community of like-minded professionals where you can level up, network, learn about best practices from experts in supply chain, professional development, and marketing, look no further. We created the Secret Society of Supply Chain to provide a safe space, a community for everyone in the industry. We offer unique opportunities for everyone to connect, grow in 3 distinct value-packed communities: the supply chainers, women in supply chain, and the creative room. From your learn at your own pace, content-rich approach of the supply chainers to the empowering community-focused space of women in supply chain and the marketing mastermind of the creative room, we mean it when we say there's truly a place for everyone. So head over to the Secret Society of Supplychain.com. Make sure you sign up, at least sign up for our newsletter, because those women in supply chain dinners, we're going to be doing one in LA, in Chicago, in Atlanta, in Cleveland, and we want to know where you are. You want to get on that list so that we're inviting you to those dinners because they're a lot of fun. Anyways, let's find out what is happening with Let's Talk Supply Chain. So our episode 420 that's out this week is a LogTech Live. So we took the episode about the drayage market, which was very popular, and we turned it into a podcast episode. So you can catch Eric Johnson hosting Alexandra from Blue Cargo talking about detention and demurrage, which I know is a huge topic, over on the podcast. So go check it out. It was episode 420. Next, on August 14th, Relex is going to be back for another episode of Relex Talk Live, and they're going to be talking about optimizing forecast accuracy with AI. That is a do not miss. So go and click the link and click the attend button so you will be we'll let you know when they go live. Plus, we can send you the recording after they go live as well. All right. We've also, on August 21st, Christine Barnhart is going live with Supply Chain Unfiltered, and she's talking about powering contract manufacturing performance. Again, this is a do not miss, so go and click that attend button. We'll send you the recording after they go live. And next, this is where we are going to be. So IANA, the Intermodal Expo, I'm going to be the host of Expo TV once again in Long Beach, September 9th through the 11th. And I can't wait to see you there. We've also got Inland 24 in Chicago, September 30th to October 2nd. Plus, I'm going to be a judge for the Supply Chain Excellence Awards in October. And then we've got the Woman in Supply Chain Forum happening November 12th and 13th in Atlanta. And we've got Manifest happening again in Vegas, this time at the Venetian, February 10th through the 12th as well. And we've got a brand new download for you. Now, this is from our friends over at Relish, and you're going to be looking at downloading the complete vendor analysis. Now, if you don't know who Relish is, they've recently been on the podcast a few times talking about the importance of vendors, vendor analysis, and so much more. So go and check that out. You can head over to letstalksupplychain.com, put the keyword into the search bar. Their episodes will come up. You can learn more about them and what they're talking about, what you need to know. But this download is great. You're going to get a solutions overview, roadmap and vision, user considerations, analysis summary. So go ahead, click the link and download this now as well. All right. Now it's time to bring up Audrey. Hello, Audrey. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's great to see you. I know you've been, I've been on vacation. We haven't seen each other since Colorado. So I think that was what, a
I
month
know that's
ago.
like almost a month ago.
So how are things been? And for anybody who doesn't know you, you should probably introduce yourself.
I should probably tell them who I am. Yeah. So I'm Audrey Ross. I'm based here in what is an overcast and very rainy
Oh, yes.
Toronto.
Mhm.
I'm just coming in from Edmonton a little late last night. I had a sort of a family weekend out in Alberta, which was great. Haven't been there in a while, and it's a gorgeous city. Had some great food. So if people want recommendations for Edmonton, let me know. I What am I up to? Gosh, it's been a busy summer. Running some logistics and supply chain over here. We had a great meeting with Blended last week with our wonderful board. So there's lots of exciting things on the docket for Blended. And then the Organization of Women in International Trade is also keeping me busy. We were not, unfortunately, selected for sessions at the World Trade Public Forum, but a group is still attending. So we're just trying to get that set and some events for the fall. So in-person networking and hearing from some really excellent panelists. So keeping busy over here.
Awesome. Yeah, and you're doing some great work for women in trade,
Yes.
which we love over here. We did a woman in
Mhm.
supply chain dinner together in Colorado, which was a lot of fun.
It was so
And then I've
fun.
just
Yes.
I've just done 2 in Orlando and Sarasota. Like I said, we're gonna be doing this in every city that I'm traveling in, so make sure that you get, to be a part of the Secret Society of Supply Chain so that we can invite you and you can be part of it,
Mhm.
because
And
those
can I
dinners
tell you,
were a
Sarah,
lot of
like
fun.
the Philadelphia one, I have like a little connection. So I had a little follow-up meeting
Yes.
and we're gonna do some little quoting and business and together. So it's been I really enjoyed because I got to go in Philadelphia and Denver and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so we're making things happen. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love to hear that. All right,
Yeah.
let's get to our poll of the week. So, the question that we asked you, what trend will shape supply chain strategies the most? I've got a fruit fly in here, so I'm really sorry about that. What trend will shape supply chain strategies the most? So, 52% of you said artificial intelligence. 25% of you said warehouse automation. 15% of you said green logistics. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. 8% of you said last mile delivery. Now, if you are in the audience right now, first of all, make a comment. I want to know where you're tuning in from. Say hi. We'll put you up on the screen, especially if you comment on the Let's Talk Supply Chain page. We'll give you a shout out if you're out on my personal page. I know there's Sophia over there right now. But I also want to know how you feel about these trends. I mean, artificial intelligence at 52% with almost 300 votes. Everybody's talking about it, but are people really implementing it? And how long is this trend going to take to happen? So, Audrey, what do you think about this?
I think I chose green logistics because I think it will affect the choices that you're making around how you're moving your goods. And I'll have a bigger impact on, some of us who are, we use air shipping quite frequently, and that might change, although United and Seco just launched a new, green friendly fuel out in Chicago. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot more physical changes maybe in green logistics. I think AI, from some of the people we talk to, Brian and some of the other people in tech space, it sounds more like the usual tech thing. If you don't have some basic foundational processes in place, I'm not sure how AI is really gonna like help that or just make it more chaotic.
Hmm.
So
Well,
I
and
don't know. I feel like AI is like a hot topic. I don't know that it's in supply chain. Again, it's like logistics tech where it's like, how system wide applicable is this?
Mhm. Well, and I think we've seen, a couple of news headlines recently of
Hmm.
some AI coming out from a couple of different people. I can't remember who they were, but they got
Yeah.
some backlash, and so they've had
Yeah.
to sort of reverse what they're doing from an AI standpoint. I think one of
Yeah.
them I read this morning, and it was like it was gonna be like a newsletter or a book or something like that that was really well intentioned, but they
Yeah.
wanted it to be written by AI, and it's got it getting a whole bunch of backlash.
Well,
So
because AI plagiarizes.
yeah.
Like AI doesn't have the same, I don't know, ethical standards that the rest of us do. So yeah, I mean,
Do we?
when we first see our AI in applications, like when I first see it, it's people doing artwork with it, or AI is doing artwork or trying to recreate images, and the humans have like three arms, and you know, like so it's just I don't know. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. New tech is obviously great. I just think there's so many kinks that it's like, why would you unleash that in an
Mhm.
already volatile, kind of chaotic kind of market if it's not tested. It's not, there's not a lot of standardization, consistency, no regulation. So I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
it's kind of like what I was talking about, I did a post yesterday about pebbling.
Oh,
I don't know if you saw
yes.
that.
Yeah.
And so when I
Yeah.
originally heard about pebbling, it's when you send gifts and little things to somebody that's gonna make them laugh or smile or whatever.
Yeah.
And really loved the concept, and then I think my husband was listening to John Tesh. He loved John Tesh,
Yeah.
and
He
John Tesh
doesn't.
was like, "The negative side of pebbling is when you do something negative to somebody on a regular basis. It could be very small to you, but then it blows up to something big." And I was like, wow. So this is kind of like AI, I feel.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of good uses to it. There's a lot of good intention behind it, potentially, but then there's
Yeah.
a lot of negative
Yeah.
that can
There's
happen.
some work to be put into
There's some work that we need to do. All right. Why don't you give everybody a bit of a market update? What are you seeing? What can you
Oh
tell
gosh.
everybody? I mean, I've kind of been out of the loop for the last 2
Yeah.
weeks, so I don't really
Probably
have
for the
anything to
best.
add.
Probably for the best. Just maybe just do this while I do it. You can
Oh, I
you can
didn't
make
pay
that
attention to
vacation
anything.
last a little longer. I mean, the hottest topic if you're in Canada is that CPCN are still in labor
They
negotiations, and a
are?
strike seems almost imminent for August.
Oh.
It was interesting because the CEO of I think it was CP was saying, yeah, it's likely a strike, and you're like, why is it likely? Why aren't you working on this? Like this would be I don't think, yeah, and I think maybe in other countries, like Canada is extremely, rail is what we do. That is how everything gets across the country. We have a very large country, the second largest geographic country in the world. It all goes by rail. If there's no rail, nothing's going to move. And August, September are farm season. Canada has a huge amount of agricultural exports. Those
Mm.
are probably some of our biggest exports, maybe top 10. So we even had farmers associations are now kind of calling on the government again to kind of intervene. So that CPCN strike, that's something to keep an eye on because nothing will move.
Well,
And the
especially
backlog, yeah.
especially if you're in the US and you ship through Canada. Definitely
Yeah, if
something
you're
to keep
doing
an eye
that
on.
Vancouver into
Mhm.
Chicago hub, that's out, right? So that'll be rough if that kind of goes through. So I'm daily keeping an eye on that one. As far as things around in the U.S. market, we still see the ILA negotiations. I did see an update, I think, from Journal of Commerce that the dates are effectively, if they don't have something in place by September 30th, they will go on strike on October 1st. However, they are kind of gathering and getting together and sitting down at the table to kind of review what the contract is and to make sure that they're, having open discussions. So that's promising.
And that will
Um,
affect what
so
specifically?
that's ILAs or the East Coast of the US. So
Mm.
all East Coast ports on the US, New York, New Jersey, Norfolk, Baltimore, Charleston, I think. So all of the ports on that side would be affected by that. And then, of course, you'd have supporting efforts. So you wouldn't be able to just swap if your goods were destined for an East Coast port, you wouldn't be able to swap them to the US or move the vessel to the US if
Mhm.
it wasn't or the West Coast, because the West Coast will also refuse to work those containers in solidarity with the East
Oh,
Coast.
wow.
That's my
Okay.
understanding of the situation. So which is a good way to have some leverage. Panama Canal, I haven't heard much. They'd increased all of the vessels going through, so we haven't seen as many delays. Although I think a lot of us had already kind of switched over to a West Coast and expedited option across the U.S. And then we're still having some significant issues in the Red Sea. The Red Sea crisis remains ongoing. Um, Lars Jensen is the best person for sort of the
Yes.
daily on the ground update. He's got some of the intel as well from, I think, the larger carriers on, where there's vessel attacks. I think there was a missile launched at a vessel yesterday or over the weekend, and of course, which is for us, it creates that we've already got those diversions going around Africa. But it takes a toll on the crew and the crew members and the seafarers who
Yeah.
are sort of manning or crewing those vessels. Because of course there's not much that they can do, and they're in a very kind of high stress environment there.
Mhm.
And I did see that there is expected another bout of bad weather around South Africa now. A couple of weeks ago, beginning of July, we had bad weather in South Africa, and that caused a delay because, of course, when you have bad weather, and we're coming into, a lot of areas are having their weather season. I know there was a typhoon outside of Ningbo a couple weeks ago, and so everyone hunkers down and waits, and then gets going. So that again causes, it could be just a 1 day disruption, but that has such a huge ripple effect in this
Mhm.
environment where there's a lack of capacity and peak season congestion. So
Yeah, awesome. That's a
always
great
interesting, Sarah.
update. Yeah, there's so many things, right? There's always a
So
new
many things.
disruption.
What
But
do
we
you think?
also want to send some well wishes and for those crews
Mhm.
to stay safe if they
Yes.
are going through the Red Sea. All right,
Yes.
let's get to our first article. So I know we've had a lot of comments about this one because we were going to talk about Taylor Swift and her
Yeah.
Eras tour and the behind the scenes and what it looks like
Mhm.
from freight and transportation. Now, just a couple of things to think about. Each concert is about 3 hours.
Yeah.
She does 16 costume changes. So from a logistics standpoint, not only are we talking about her sets and like the movement of her sets, but I think we're also talking about how she gets from one end of the stage to the other, and then she changes 16 times in 3 hours. I don't know if I could do it. But one of the interesting pieces of information from this particular article, I loved this article. If you can, go and click the link, read the article. But it's predicted that she's spending $30 million just in freight and transportation alone, which is a crazy, crazy number. But the way that she's able to actually move from city to city so quickly,
Mhm.
because it does take 2 to 3 weeks for those sets to be put together and built. She has two
Mhm.
plus sets so that she can set up in different places at once, and about 50 trucks. There's some misinformation out there, whether
Yeah.
it's or some confusion as to whether it's 50 trucks or 80 trucks. I'm going to go
Yeah.
with 50 trucks.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of coordination. There's so much behind the scenes on this tour. What did you
Yeah.
think about this particular article?
I think it's very interesting. I mean, I had when I was kind of in high school and that I did a lot of stage management and sort of technical theater and backstage theater. So for me, it's really interesting to see how concerts do it and how they get themselves set up. And it definitely takes a lot of planning. And you can see as well for something like a concert tour, these especially when they're going across the U.S., they're definitely going by truck. It'll be interesting to see how they actually get these sets if they do source construction when she's in other countries, like if she's in Europe, if they just kind of
Yeah.
build them over, like do they carry them across the ocean or do they just build new materials and build them up over there. So it would be interesting to know kind of a more in depth of what happens, but I think it's fascinating like how they've done all of these things to make it seems like it would be a very seamless visual experience for the viewer, like for the audience. Like they probably don't even realize like there's like a little cart, like a little roller coaster or something
Yes.
that takes her from
A
one side of the
roller
stage to the other
coaster.
side of the stage, underneath the stage. Um, you know, and then I think it's kind of tracking what's interesting about these concerts as well would be to see some of this is the environmental impact, like what choices are they making to make things more green or to make things more sustainable. And then also, worth noting, she pays really well. I think those
Mhm.
50 truck drivers ended up with like $100,000 bonus at the end of last year for all of the work that they've been doing. So,
Yeah.
you can't beat that on a pay scale.
Yeah, I think one of the numbers was $55 million, not only just to
Yes.
the truck
Just for
drivers,
the yeah,
but also to everybody
yeah,
involved in her show as kind of
yeah,
a bonus. And I think that's attributed to who she is. From a
yeah,
sustainability standpoint, I think one of the things that this article mentions is that she does contribute to food banks wherever she goes. So in the
yeah,
cities that she is performing and has a concert
Yes.
Conference. I got conferences on my mind. Concerts. She contributes to food banks.
Yes. In a
Um,
big way, because a lot of them said that it was like some of their biggest donations. So
Yeah, and I think the other thing to note is obviously the preparation.
yeah.
So, okay, we're talking about Taylor Swift, we're talking about a concert, but this really goes for anything that you're doing in life.
Yeah.
So, she started preparing, I think, 6 months ahead
Yeah.
for her endurance so that she could, be able to perform for those 3 hours. She's got a
Yeah.
strict regimen. She doesn't get to see very many people. She's like
No.
in bed most of the time
Yeah.
because she doesn't want to get sick and disappoint the people who are paying to come to her shows. No alcohol.
Yeah.
But really, logistically speaking, like you said, she's got this rocket sled. I think it's really one of those things that when a mechanics go slide under a car.
Oh, okay. Like one of those little
I think
like
it's one of
four
those
wheel
things,
or
and they
like
like push her to the other
yeah.
side of the stage, so she gets there really, really quickly. But these are
Yeah.
all logistics. These are all things
Yeah, some team sat down and planned all of this
planned,
out in sequence,
planning.
timed to her song length, time to like,
Mhm.
okay, what if she takes a minute to chat to the audience? Then, how do we navigate those timelines?
And Bayram, I'm working on this. If you've got a contact, I mean, I am fully open. If they want to contact me, I have no problem talking to their team about their supply chain experience.
Yeah.
Um, so this is really fascinating. And like you said, they don't really talk about in this article about what she does from country to country.
Yeah.
This is really talking about trucks, but you're right. If she's going from the US to Europe, maybe she's got 2+ sets in Europe,
Um,
maybe 2+ sets in North
Australia,
America.
yeah,
Yeah, so it'll be
Japan.
interesting to do a little bit more of a deep dive, and
Yeah.
we're gonna have to find somebody to do that. All right, let's get to our next article. This one's a little bit short, but I thought it was worth talking about because Levi Strauss. A lot of people are thinking about their distribution networks.
Yes.
They're thinking
Yes,
about
we
whether
are.
to bring it in house. They're thinking about whether to work with 3PLs. There are pros and cons to both. I've been on the 3PL side. I get it. But also at the same time, you don't necessarily want to become a warehousing company. You want to be able to focus on what you do best as well. And so there's really that push pull every time we look at bringing it in house or outsourcing it. Now, Levi Strauss has come out and said that they're going to do a hybrid model. So they're going to do some in-house, but then they're going to do some with a 3PL. They also talked about a different brand in here, and I can't remember what the brand was. They've gone all in-house because they want to have control not only over their operations, but their sustainability component to distribution as well. So what did you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting discussion, and it's nice to get insights on this, especially if you're a smaller to medium enterprise, to understand, like, have more kind of behind the scenes on what the bigger companies are doing,
Mhm.
right? Because I think sometimes we have this idea that either they probably have it all in house, or they have like one singular 3PL that they're using exclusively.
Right.
And I found out through conversations and over the years that that might not be the case, that there might be, I always was like, oh gosh, like I'm using, sort of 4 or 5 forwarders, and maybe I should be using one because that's probably what everybody else does. And then you find out that no, a lot of people have 3 or 4 forwarders, depending on the route, the region, the location. It's direct to consumer. Levi Strauss seems to be really clear on what their goal is, or what their motivation is, right? And it's that direct to consumer business. And so they really are just trying to position themselves to be able to feed that goal. So it's interesting to understand their strategy a bit more, but to also see there's a specific goal. Here's what they're doing. It's different from what they were doing before. So I think those are valuable insights for anyone in supply chain.
Well, and also what I thought was a little bit different was to service their East Coast customers. They
Yeah,
opened up a DC in Kentucky.
yeah,
We
yeah.
don't hear about Kentucky very often. I mean, usually for the
Wait,
East Coast,
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, you're like New Jersey,
Chicago.
you're kind of
Yeah.
over, yeah. Yeah. I think probably they got a good, there must be a nice, kind of municipal benefit to choosing that location. Same with
Mm,
Tennessee. We see all sorts of DCs popping up in Tennessee and also in Ohio. So there must be
mhm.
some sort of advantage to doing so. But
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
guess it with all the information that we can have right now from a data perspective,
Yeah.
really where are those customers and where can we service them the
Yeah.
fastest, cheapest way possible? All right.
Greenest. Yeah.
Cleanest. Yes. Good point. All right. Let's get to our last article. So, this article is from Supply Chain Digital and it talks about the top 10 sustainable supply chains. Now, I really liked this article because it talks a little bit about what each company is focusing on. I was a
Mhm.
little bit confused though, because it wasn't all retailers. There were some tech brands in there that
Yeah.
don't really have supply chains. They support supply chains. So, I was a
Yeah.
little bit confused by that.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think it's a good article to showcase what each company is sort of focusing on when they think about sustainable supply chains.
Mhm.
So I'm going to scroll through so you can see what brands are
Yeah.
on there. It was interesting for Adidas, recycled plastics, reducing waste. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that they're focusing on. What did you think about this? And then I'll kind of go through the brands.
Yeah, I thought it was, it's some of the top 10, some of the largest companies in the world. They're focused on, there's certain pieces that are pulled in. It'd be interesting to see something a bit more comprehensive.
Mhm.
Because we are starting to see as it's, a couple of them mentioned if it was scope one, scope two, or scope three focus, which is, interesting because scope one and scope two are around, a little bit more around facilities and product, and scope three tends to be more focused on emissions. So it's, everyone doing their part is important, but
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important for us to, when we think about our supply chains or we think about supporting our customers, what is it that they're focusing on? What is it that's
Mhm.
important to them? What are they doing first to move on to something second?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So Samsung talks about product packaging. They are
Yeah,
very focused on product packaging. That's what they're looking
which
at
is
right
good.
now.
Yeah, because that
Um,
affects the consumer directly, and it affects your municipality and your taxes on trying to recycle, the packaging of these companies.
Yeah, there was a lot of circular economy in here. IBM
Good.
is looking at reaching carbon neutral by 2030, but in the meantime,
Yeah.
90 they're looking to divert 90% of non-hazardous waste by 2025. It doesn't
Mhm.
say how far they are to that
Yes.
goal
Yeah.
though, considering that 2025 is only about 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Like you said, scope 1, scope 2 emissions, that's
Yeah.
Siemens.
Yeah.
Nestle is talking about nutritional education and then decarbonizing the sea shipping of their supply chain. And they're actually working with, they said maritime firms. I would wonder if that's sort of like steamship lines or whatever to
Or
use green
consultants or
fuels.
something. But
Yeah.
Nestle, yeah, Nestle has a lot. Like they might be doing some sustainable work on this side, but then there's the sort of ESG and like, positive labor on the other side. We forget how extensive Nestle is in the world. I mean, it has companies and arms like just all over. It is completely global. And so it's, it is also around how they're behaving in other countries.
Well, and you bring up a really good point because nowhere in here did any of these brands talk about forced labor. And
Yeah.
forced labor is one of the things that the US Customs and Border Control are cracking down on and
Yeah.
actually eliminating the
Yeah.
importation of any goods that have to do with forced labor. So that's a really
Yeah.
good point that none of
Because
them actually talk about.
sustainability is a mix, right? Sustainability is not exclusively green and emissions.
Mhm.
Sustainability is around the sustainability of your business practice, or that's how I think some of us see it as a whole, right? And so when we talk about, ESG or, corporate source CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG, environmental sustainable governance, there's a factor in there that's around labor and
Mhm.
around, having good working conditions. So
Yeah.
that this seems to be really focused on their green, which is great, but I think some of us, there's a bigger picture to kind of investigate as well.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about the forced labor point, I had Patricia from Responsible Sourcing Network on Thoughts and Coffee probably about a month ago. Go and check out that episode because she gives you the
It was so
411
good.
on
Yeah,
everything. It was
yeah,
awesome. Now, Bayram
yeah,
says, does any big company prepare the sustainable strategy for the next
yes,
10 years or 20 years? I would
yeah,
assume so, yes, but they are
yeah,
focusing on specific things.
yeah,
And so you have to figure out when you're looking at that strategy for the next 10 to 20 years, what are those categories that you're going to be able to focus on and get results in, make an
And a
impact.
lot of them said 2025 goals, 2030 goals. And so the
They did.
key now is to see who's actually hit those goals and who's just like, oh, we're renouncing
Hmm.
2050 goals. And you're like, well, that was the goal that you had, that you announced in 2018 that you said would be done by 2030. So we've got to be really, hold people accountable.
Yeah, it's so true. And just a couple other mentions. P&G supporting local farmers. They're hoping to end deforestation. IKEA is doing sustainably sourced cotton, and
Yes.
Schneider Electric is replacing single-use plastic. So go and check out that article because it lists a few more things that we didn't really get to.
Yeah.
But thank you so much to everybody who joined us.
Uh,
Next week, Dimitri from Dole, we featured his article, his Forbes article on Thoughts and Coffee just a few weeks ago, and he's going to be here to talk to us all about that, his supply chain strategies, how he's helping to combat food waste, and so much more. So I'll see you next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Audrey, thank you so much for joining me today. It was so good to see you.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.